In an earlier video, I showed you how to use a technique proposed by Scratch user jet_pilot to add a pause feature to the game, right? And so we've got the ability to run this game, and then when I use the A key, we hit pause, and when we hit the B key, we unpause, right? And that was all done with a little bit of code on the stage, which said that when the A key is pressed, toggle this on-off switch. And I like that. I think that's a really nice solution. I loved how he or she made that work. The thing that I wanted to change about this personally was I don't like the idea of the A and B key being the keys I have to turn, that I have to remember that A means pause and B means unpause. Right? And if I think about most games that we play, if there's a pause feature, it's normally the same button to toggle on and off. Right? We might use just the A key or just the B key, or maybe in this case we want to use the P key as pause. Right? And so I want to change that idea. I want to not have two keys. I want to do it only to one particular situation. I only want to have one key. So what I want to do is to be able to combine this idea of toggling on and off under a single key. And again, I'm just, for sake of fun, going to change it to the P key. Well, the problem is this. When the P key is pressed, what action I need to take is going to change depending on the situation of the game. Right? If the game is currently running, then I need to turn pause on, or turn the game off. And if the game is off, then I need to turn it back on again. And so the question is, how do we go about doing that? And there's two ways that we could do this. I think probably the way that is easiest to understand and fitting with all the work we've already done is simply to do the following. We basically want to say that when the pause key is pressed, if the on value is currently 1, well, then I want to change it. I want to change it to its alternate. I want to change it to 0. Well, else, if on wasn't 1, then it must have been 0, so I want to set it back to 1. Right? And this is pretty much the easiest way to do this overall. We say when the P key is pressed, if on was 1, turn it to 0. Otherwise, well, the only other option is 1, so turn it back to 1. And so now I can run this, and I can simply use the P key, P pauses, and P unpauses, right? So I don't have to hunt around the board for A versus B. I can pause or unpause right from that one situation. And that's really nice. Now, I was talking about this, and then one of my colleagues was saying, well, you know, but this is kind of ugly, this whole idea of looking at on again, off again. Isn't there a different way to do this? And there is one more different way that we could do this. And it actually requires a little more changing, but it works this way. The idea would be when the game starts running, I set on to 1. And the idea would be, well, let's just, instead of changing it back and forth to 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, let's actually instead do something a little more mathematical. And so what we could do is to say change on by 1. And so now I'm just going to run this. It won't actually work, but as I hit the P key, I go to 2, 3, and you'll notice over here the on variable is toggling from, every time I hit the P key, it's increasing by 1. Okay? And so the idea would be, well, I like odd numbers, right? Odd numbers, since on equals 1 means that it should run, on equals 2 means I should stop, on equals 3 means I should run. We're basically looking at the idea of odd numbers mean run, and even numbers mean pause. And so you say, well, how do you even check for that? Turns out that's really pretty easy to do with a feature that you may not have ever witnessed in here, and that's the modulo feature. Modulo is the remainder when you do division. And so what I'm actually interested in right now is this. I want to know when I take on and divide it by 2, is that number what? Well, if you take any number and divide it by 2, the remainder is either going to be 0 or it's going to be 1, right? Because if it's an even number, when you divide by 2, you get 0. When it's an odd number, you get a remainder of 1. And so we could take this block, and I'm going to duplicate it right now, and we could, instead of saying is on 0 and is on 1, we could say when I divide by 2, is it 0 or 1? And now I'm not going to take the time to fix all of the fish, but you'll notice now that as I run this, when I hit the P key, P, right, the shark paused because the shark's the only one who's been updated. And now I'll hit it again. He's running. Pause, run, right? All based on whether this number here is on or even. That's just another way to do it. I do in no way think it's a better way to do it, and it's probably a little more code overall, but it kind of makes an interesting way of looking at this stage. Just the idea of every time I hit the P key, just add one more to it. So you can use either one of those features, and if you want to go back to exactly the way jet_pilot did, that works too.